Thursday through Saturday, there's a period of snow coming. It's 30 years.
We're at capacity in here, so Susan has.
Okay.
Dead chair.
Somebody could sit there if they're desperate. Yeah. Okay.
But they're set up in classroom.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Am I
Good
loud
morning.
enough?
Good
Can you hear
morning,
me?
everyone. I think we'll start now. It's 11 o'clock. So welcome to Harry's presentation on Paul Robeson. So will you all kindly silence your cell phones, either turn them off or just silence them? Thank you, Harry.
Okay. Get the lights. Can you get the lights, Kathleen? Well, thank you all for coming. And this is a class that I did 5 or 6, maybe 7 years ago. I've changed it a little bit, but it's about a very important person in the 20th century who was a remarkably versatile, diverse interests. On top of everything else, he spoke 20 languages fluently. I mean, that's what we're talking about, somebody who's not just a wonderful actor, singer, and everything else, but this man was brilliant in so many different ways. I'll do my best in an hour to try to tell you something more about him. He's a baritone, concert artist, stage, film actor who became famous for his cultural accomplishments and for his political activism. His father was born into slavery. He escaped from a plantation when he was in his teens and eventually became minister of Princeton's Witherspoon Street Presbyterian Church in 1881. Robeson had 3 brothers and a sister who was born in 1895. So 1898 makes him virtually a 20th century figure. And here you see him in 3 different stages of his life, his activism and his acting, significantly with a white woman, which I'll talk about a little bit later, and of course as a football player. His parents are Maria Louise and William Robeson. In 1900, his father had been head of this church in about almost 20 years. A disagreement with racial overtones arose between his father and the white members of this Witherspoon church. Though Robeson's father had the support of his black congregation, he was forced to resign. The white members were a little more of a majority, and his father virtually has to totally withdraw from what he considered to be his life's calling. Paul Leroy Robeson was born in Princeton, New Jersey in 1888 to Reverend Drew Robeson and Maria Louisa Bullshill. His mother was from a prominent Quaker family of mixed ancestry. His father, William, was of Igbo origin and born, as I said, into slavery. And he loses his job when he comes into conflict with white church leadership in Princeton. And over his father was a vocal activist also. His father did not sit kindly by when people made slurring remarks about his background. Here's his birthplace. The loss of his church forces his father to take menial jobs. 3 years later, when Robeson was 6, his mother dies in a house fire. Awful. Eventually, his father becomes financially incapable of maintaining the house, and his family moves to an attic of a store in Westfield, New Jersey. Robeson attends nearby Somerville High School, where he is Mr. Everything. He's awarded an academic scholarship at Rutgers. He's only the 3rd African American to even go to Rutgers, and here he is, you can see here in his high school.
What is Mr. Everything?
What is what?
What does that mean, Mr. Everything?
All round, athletic, musical, academic. I mean, he has no weak points. In 1913, a picture of his 1913 football team. He attends Somerville, New Jersey, where he performs in Julius Caesar and Othello in the high school, put on by the high school musical society. Debates. He excels in football, basketball, baseball, and track. He was a big man. He was 6'3", 220 pounds when he was playing in college. So we're talking about somebody who's not just big. He doesn't look quite as large in this picture, but he grows and has a remarkable stature and presence, as you'll see about him too. When his father becomes ill, Robeson assumes sole responsibility, shuttling back and forth between Rutgers and Somerville, which are not too far apart. He does win in 1915. He wins an academic scholarship to Rutgers, where he was named a football All-American for 2 years in a row, and he was the class valedictorian. It shows you the remarkable extent of his abilities. 80 years later, he's inducted into the College Football Hall of Fame. His father dies when he's in college, when he's at Rutgers. As I said, he's only the third African American to enroll at Rutgers, and the only one who was, at that time, was in the student body. And here he is, you can see right here in the front row. I'm not sure when this is taken. When he tries out for the football team, apparently, the story goes, and his teammates gave him a really hard time. They hassled him, they made him run extra laps, they beat up, hurt him in all sorts of different drills. And he was really abused a great deal, at least is what I've heard about. He was, should we say, tested by aggressive initiation. His nose was broken, his shoulder was dislocated. The coach, however, decides that he has overcome the provocations and announced that he has made the team, which was fortunate for Rutgers. So these guys are all, this may be when he was a freshman, and these are later, some of his later teammates. But he takes a great deal of abuse because he is the only African American in Rutgers and, of course, on the football team. Rutgers is 6'3". Robeson plays 4 sports, excelling in football. He's an All-American, which in those days obviously has a much narrower basis, but still, Notre Dame and Texas and all these other big colleges were not obviously football powers, but Rutgers was part of the Ivy League, which was a big, and Penn State, which were big football powers. As a sophomore, amidst Rutgers' sesquicentennial celebration, he was benched when a Southern team refused to take the field because Rutgers had fielded a Negro. That's what we're talking about at this particular time. And, but he stays with it. It shows the extent, the degree of racism, certainly at that point in 1919, 1920. I mean, it was unheard of for a Negro to play. He was a member of the Cap and Skull Society. He sang off campus for spending money and on campus, albeit informally with the Glee Club, since he was excluded from singing at all white mixers. So he's very much aware and becomes very, very quickly of the nature of societal views of African Americans at this particular time. But he's recognized for many different talents, and he was admitted to the Cap and Skull on the basis of his excellence in athletics, academics, the arts, and public service. So this society has continued in Rutgers on and off. Currently, it's on. It's been rejuvenated. For a long time, it was dropped. I'm not sure why, for what particular reasons, but it's a big deal, and obviously sort of attempting to go a little bit after the Skull and Bones at Yale, or the Porcelain, whatever, the society at Harvard, the equivalent of it. So it was It was a big deal for a black man to be initiated into this. I think there were 12 members of the class who were in this cap and skull. Leadership as well as character is considered. Using these criteria, only, as I say, 12 or less than 0.5% of the Rutgers class were selected. It was a good-sized university even back then. So there they are with four of his classmates, three of his classmates. He's accepted into Phi Beta Kappa, and his classmates recognize abilities by electing him valedictorian, which is remarkable. Now, 2019 was the centennial of his graduation from Rutgers. In his speech, which was called The New Idealism, Robeson exhorted his classmates to work for equality for all Americans. As a friend said, he didn't just accept abuse, he pushed back. During the course of his life, he learned, as I said, and spoke more than 20 languages fluently, including African and Asian tongues. Remarkable. 1917, before he's even graduated, Robeson has expounded on the incongruity of African Americans fighting for the U.S. in the First World War while not being afforded the same opportunities as whites in the United States. He's very much aware of this. Obviously starts with his father being forced to leave the church where he was a minister. Okay. Robeson, after graduating, Robeson goes to NYU Law School, but the atmosphere makes him uncomfortable, and he leaves after a semester in 1920. He moves to Harlem, transfers to Columbia Law School, which is right on the edge of Harlem. Already known in the black community for his singing, he was selected to perform at the dedication of the Harlem YWCA. So there he is right here with his Columbia classmates right there. He paid his tuition at Columbia by playing pro football for teams in Akron and Milwaukee. This is before the days of the NFL, but he was certainly good enough. And here he is running with the ball in the top picture. Actually, both, I'm not sure what position he played, but he was obviously a very aggressive man to try to tackle. He also plays basketball, as I said. And think about the distance to get, you're in graduate school or law school and you're trying to get to Akron or to Milwaukee. I mean, you spend a lot of time traveling, and he does all this, juggles all of these things athletically, but he makes a certain amount of money for his Columbia tuition. He was coached by the legendary Fritz Pollard in football, and the Milwaukee Badgers, who would become the Green Bay Packers shortly after this. He's recruited by Fritz Pollard to play while he continues his law studies. In the spring of 1921, he postpones school to play football. Pollard was the first African-American head coach in the National Football League a little bit later. So these are some pictures of him playing. Okay, now we're going to move to a different stage here. He marries Essie Good in 1921, and I could sit here and do another whole class on her. I won't, but she is a remarkable woman, and I'll just say a couple of things about her. They meet in 1920 and marry / elope a year later. Elsandra Essie Cardozo Good Robeson was an African-American anthropologist, author, actor, and civil rights activist, and she becomes a wife and business manager of Paul Robeson. So she sort of manages his career as he gets on through the athletics and the college studies stage, and she manages his career after this. They have one son, Paul Jr., born in 1927. remarkable woman later participates in the founding of the UN. She writes an influential anthropological text called African Journey. She champions the cause of women on the world stage. She's born in 1895, so she's several years older than he is. Family of Black professionals. Essie earns a chemistry degree from Columbia, and as a very young woman heads a lab at Columbia Presbyterian Hospital. And she's the first African American to get involved in this at all. She's 25 and he's 22. They elope, and she takes on the role of being a tour manager, acting coach, breadwinner, while he hones his skills. They make a formidable team, which is not surprising. While in law school, he's not only playing football, but he begins his stage career acting and singing in these two plays, Shuffle Along and Taboo. He pones school a little bit for a while anyway to play Jim in this play called Taboo. The play was adapted to highlight his singing. I mean, as you'll see shortly, he has an incredibly powerful voice. He also sings in a chorus in an off-Broadway production of Shuffle Along. He does graduate from Columbia in 1923 with all these other things, getting married, playing football, singing and doing plays in New York. In 1924, he plays the lead in All God's Children Got Wings by Eugene O'Neill about miscegenation, inspired by the old Negro spiritual. O'Neill writes the play in the fall of 23 and revises the text only slightly for its 1924 production. Arguably, it's one of his most controversial plays, starring Robeson in the premiere, in which he plays a Black husband of an abusive white woman who, resenting her husband's skin color, destroys his promising career as a lawyer. I'm just going to play a little bit of this here.
I got shoes, you got shoes, all of God's children got shoes. When I get to heaven, gonna put on my shoes, I'm gonna walk all over God's heaven. Heaven, heaven, everybody talk about a heaven, ain't going there. Heaven, heaven, I'm gonna walk all over God's heaven. I got a robe, you got a robe, all of God's children got robes. When I get to heaven, gonna put on my robe, I'm gonna shout all over God's heaven. Heaven, heaven, everybody talk about a heaven, ain't going there. Heaven, heaven, I'm gonna shout all over God's heaven.
Okay.
I got a harp, you got a harp, all the God's children got harps. When I get to heaven, gonna take up my harp, I'm gonna play all over God's heaven. Heaven, heaven, everybody talk about a heaven, ain't going there. Heaven, heaven, I'm gonna play all over God's heaven.
Okay. He becomes a notable figure in the Harlem Renaissance. And this scene from O'Neill's in All God's Children Got Wings, in which Robeson kisses Mary Blair's hand, which creates a national uproar. Oh, God. Really hard to believe, but it does. However, the greatest problem with this stage play was that many of the audience's critics had an inability to see beyond the miscegenation and interracial kiss. So they couldn't, it's about the human condition. And people simply focus, as we do today in a different way, on the racial overtones of this. But this was a very controversial play because of the fact that he kisses Mary Blair's hand. Anyway. 1925, his film career begins and continues. You can see some of the different movies that he made here. It's pretty much obvious. During the 1930s, Robeson becomes increasingly attuned to the sufferings of people of other cultures. Notably, when he goes there, the British working class and the colonized peoples of the British Empire. He advocated for Republican forces during the Spanish Civil War, and he becomes active in the Council on African American Affairs. So he's really getting very involved in more than just singing and dancing and what he had done before. And he picks parts that are, and I'll show you Emperor Jones in just a minute, but that are really enable him to speak forcefully for the cause, for the plights of the African Americans. In 1928, Robeson scores a major success in the London, that's how he knows he's been over there now several times, of Showboat. He settles in London for several years with Essie while continuing to establish himself as a concert artist. And I'll just play this picture here. I think we're familiar with this.
There's an old man called the Mississippi. That's the old man that I'd like to be. What does he care if the world's got troubles? What does he care if the land ain't free? Old Man River, that old man River, he must know something, but don't say nothing. He just keeps rolling, he keeps on rolling along. He don't plant potatoes, he don't plant cotton. Them that plants them is soon forgotten. But old man River, he just keeps rolling along. You and me, we sweat and strain, body all aching and racked with pain. Tote that pot, lift that pail, you get a little drunk and your land's in jail. I get weary and sick of trying. I'm tired of living and scared of dying. But old man River, he just keeps rolling on.
Okay, let me just, I want to back up, did I? Okay, this song is written by Jerome Kern and Oscar Hammerstein in the 1927 Showboat. So he would be 29 years old at that point when he sings it. He stars as Joe in the London performance in 1928, this version was recorded at the time. So, and as you can see, his voice is getting more powerful as we go along, more range. I don't have enough adjectives to describe it. Here's another play, a play that he does, The Emperor Jones, a play by Eugene O'Neill, tells the tale of Brutus Jones, a resourceful, self-assured African-American and a former Pullman car porter. Kills another black man in a dice game. He's jailed, escapes to a Caribbean island where he sets himself up as an emperor. And in 1933, it is made into a film. Robeson comes on in 1925 and replaces Gilpin, who had done this before, with a young and then unknown. He replaces as a young and unknown actor, who previously only performed on the concert stage. He stars in the title role in the New York revival of 28 performances, later the London production. After an appearance of an appearance in Tales of Manhattan, the production that he felt was very offensive to my people. He announced that he would no longer act in films because of the demeaning roles available to blacks. So this is, I don't know the play particularly, but it's obviously he's put in a very difficult and awkward position. Okay, now next one is also rather interesting. In 1933, Essie discovers that Robeson is having an affair with Peggy Ashcroft, who's one of his co-actresses. They're having an affair. She seeks a divorce. He's ready to go through with it. And then who should appear but his football coach, Fritz Pollard, saying to divorce Essie and marrying Ashcroft will do irreparable damage to his career. And Robeson, they do not get divorced, and they reconcile, although it's not quite as close as it obviously was before. Apparently, he'd been having other relationships with other women in his various roles as an actor, and she tolerated this. She knew this, and they decided to stick it out. Ashcroft and Robeson's relationship ends in 1932, following which the husband reconciles with his wife, or Robeson reconciles. Here she is at the age of 22 when he first meets her, and he's probably 32 at that point, maybe a little older. This is the play in which this is a very powerful discussion of Othello by Robeson.
Shakespeare, the genius that he was, seemed to foreshadow and understand many of the problems that have since arisen in our world, about were present then. First, I would say that here is a part which has dignity for the Negro actor. Often we don't get those opportunities. And I would say that my people will be very proud of mine or any other Negro actor appearing in such a part. I think also that to me, Othello is one of a different culture. Shakespeare insists that he's African, and some argue whether he's the word black and the fact that he's from Africa is very clear to me. And that Shakespeare posed this problem of a, say, black man in a white system from America. We like to say pass and chance and do for the morning dew. And I happened to pick up an old script of Shakespeare, and the dew was very clear. It was D-I-E-W, and it was not chance, C-H-A-U-N-C-E, so it was dew, like in lieu of, and chance and dance, very, very Shakespearean. And one terrible, difficult sound was almost at the beginning of the play, my services, which I have done the scenery, my services. I would say my services. I had to work on that very. But later I took some special work at the University of London, and also in my university days I majored in English, and I have records from the earliest times, from time of Anglo-Saxon, matter of fact, through Chaucer. And of course, since I worked on my songs with Roger Quilter, and after you draw, I couldn't walk out here and say, drink to me only with thine eyes, and I will pledge with mine. It's got to be very, drink to me only with thine eyes, and I will pledge with mine.
Okay, Peter, would you read this?
Robeson's political activities began with his involvement with unemployed workers and anti-imperialist students who he met in Britain, and continued with support for the loyalist cause in the Spanish Civil War and his opposition to fascism. In the United States, he became active in the civil rights movement and other Soviet Union and for communism, and his criticism of the United States government and its foreign policy would cause him to be blacklisted during the McCarthy era.
Thank you. Well, this is just sort of an indication of what's going to happen now as far as his career is concerned, because he takes these, at those days, very radical stance. So here he is advocating for the Republican forces during the Spanish Civil War, obviously against fascism, against Franco, speaks out publicly in this country and in England. As far as I know, he doesn't go to Spain, but he's increasingly attuned to the sufferings of people from other cultures. Notably, as I said before, the British working class and the colonized people of empires everywhere. And he advocates for the Republican forces during the Civil War, and he becomes very active in the Council on African American Affairs. He does go to the Soviet Union in 1934 and becomes an enthusiastic supporter of that country. This is a little before Stalin really is quite so powerful, so awful in Russia and in the Soviet Union. This is going to come, but as Stalin gets worse and worse, Robeson's position supporting the Soviet Union is increasingly marginalized. So I think that's an important point to make here. He travels in June of 34 to Moscow, and he's unable to find Itzik Pfeiffer, a prominent Soviet Yiddish poet, playwright, and political activist. Robeson let Soviet authorities know that he wanted to see Itzik Pfeiffer. Pfeffer, thank you. And reluctant to use Robeson as a propagandist for the Soviet Union, Stalin brings Pfeffer from prison to see Robeson. They take him out of prison. Here he is, they talk. Later, when Robeson leaves, Pfeffer is executed.
It's called The Night of the Murdered Poets. He wasn't the only one.
Yeah. No, we won't get into all that now. He supports. He's supporting the Soviet Union supports the Soviet Union for later on opposing Hitler. We shall not make war on the Soviet Union. We should support peace and friendship among all nations, especially Soviet Russia. And he's blacklisted for saying this in the American press, including many periodicals of the Negro press, such as The Crisis. So he's not popular for the stances that he's frequently taking here. Native Land is a documentary made in 1942, and he participates as an off-screen narrator and vocalist. It's a documentary directed by Leo Hurwitz and Paul Strand. It's a combination of a documentary format, staged reenactments. The film depicts the struggle of trade unions against union-busting corporations and their spies and contractors. It was based on the 1938 report of the La Follette Committee's investigation of the repression of labor organizing. Very controversial play, which Robeson leaps at the opportunity to produce and work in. This is remarkable. He meets President Truman in 1946 and admonishes him for not enacting legislation to end lynching. Obviously, terrible, but the fact that he can go to Truman, who didn't back down to many people, Truman immediately terminates the meeting, declares the time was not right to propose anti-lynching legislation. There's Truman. All this. This occurs after mass lynchings of 4 African Americans in July 25th, 1946, so it's within the next couple of months. Robeson left by saying, "Negroes will defend themselves, Mr. President." That's sort of his position. He does not back down on this at all. In 1948, he works for Henry Wallace and was considered a possible vice presidential candidate. He supports Wallace's bid for President of the United States. He travels to the Deep South at the risk of his own life to campaign for Wallace. In the ensuing years, Robeson was forced to go overseas to work because his concert performances were canceled by at the FBI's behest. And we all know who the director of the FBI was at that point, J. Edgar. He was a presidential nominee for the revived Progressive Party in the 48 election. Also after, I don't know quite how the timing worked on that, but I guess he was the vice presidential candidate. He strongly supports the New Deal liberalism of Roosevelt and, as I said again, seeks conciliation with the Soviet Union. Really, and this is after the war is over now, 1948, and we see what Soviet Union is, the direction they're heading. He still supports them. 52, he's awarded the Stalin Peace Prize by the Soviet Union, not surprisingly, but was denied a passport to go to Moscow to receive it. His right to travel was eventually restored as a result of the 58 United States Supreme Court decision. And you can read this statement here to the left of his picture. That's his passport that he's showing up there. So he does eventually go, but it's a major loss of income when you cannot perform nationally or internationally. It really affects his life. He accepts the award, the Stalin Award, of $25,000 in New York in April of '53. In the '58 ruling, the Supreme Court rules that the State Department could not deny passports based on political beliefs or affiliations, declaring such denials unconstitutional and affirming that the right to travel is a fundamental liberty. I won't say more about that now, however. We'll stay away from that. It results in severe financial hardships for Robeson. He loses many speaking engagements because people want to hear him all around the world. Now here's an interesting clip from the McCarthy hearings. Robeson is being, I won't say interrogated, being questioned. Wait a sec here.
Now, Mr. Robeson.
Do I have the privilege of asking who is addressing me?
A little louder.
I'm Richard Aaron.
What is your position?
I'm director of the staff. Did you file a passport application in July 2, 1954?
I have filed about 25 in the last few months.
In July of 1954, were you requested to submit a non-communist affidavit?
Under no conditions would I think of signing such an affidavit. It is a contradiction of the rights of American citizens.
Are you now a member of the Communist Party?
Oh, please.
Please answer, will you, Mr. Robeson?
What is the Communist Party? What do you mean by that?
Are you now a member of the Communist
Would you like
Party?
to come to the ballot box when I vote and take out the ballots and see?
Mr. Chairman, I respectfully suggest the witness be directed to answer the question.
You are directed to answer the question.
I invoke the Fifth Amendment and forget it.
I respectfully suggest the witness be directed to answer the question whether, if he gave us a truthful answer, he would be supplying information which might be used against him in a criminal proceeding.
You are directed to answer, Mr. Robeson.
In the first place, wherever I have been in the world, the first to die in the struggle against fascism were the communists. I laid many wreaths upon the graves of communists. That is not criminal. Chief Justice Warren has been very clear that the Fifth Amendment does not have anything to do with the influence of criminality. I invoke the Fifth Amendment.
Have you ever been known under the name of John Thomas?
Oh, please, does somebody here want me to put up for perjury someplace? John Thomas, my name is Paul Robeson, and anything I have to say, I have said in public all over the world, and that is why I'm here today.
Mr. Chairman, I ask that you direct the witness to answer the question. He's making a speech. I ask you to affirm or deny the fact that your Communist Party name was John Thomas.
The Fifth Amendment. This is it.
The witness talks very loud when he makes a speech, but when he invokes the Fifth Amendment, I can't hear it.
I have medals for diction. I can talk, talk a little louder. I invoke the Fifth Amendment loudly.
Sir, who are Mr. and Mrs. Vladimir
I
Nakia?
invoke the Fifth Amendment.
Do you know a Manning Johnson?
I invoke the Fifth Amendment.
Do you know Gregory Kifitz?
I invoke the Fifth Amendment.
Do you know a Max Jurgen?
I invoke the Fifth Amendment.
Max Jurgen.
Why don't you have these people here to be cross-examined? Could I ask whether this is legal?
This is not only legal, but usual. By unanimous vote, this committee has been instructed to perform this very distasteful task.
To whom am I talking?
You're speaking of the chairman of the committee.
To Mr. Walter?
Yes,
The Pennsylvania Walter?
that is right.
Representative of the steel workers?
That is right.
And the coal mining workers?
That is right.
Not United States Steel by any chance. A great patriot.
That is right.
You are the author of the bills that are going to keep all kinds of decent people out of the country.
No, only your kind.
Colored people like myself. And you would let in the Teutonic Anglo-Saxon stock.
We are trying to make it easier to get rid of your kind, too.
You don't want any colored people to come in. Could I be allowed to read from my statement?
Will you just tell this committee, please, while under oath, Mr. Robeson, the communists who participated in the preparation of that statement?
Oh, please. The reason I am here today, from the mouth of the State Department itself, is I should not be allowed to travel because I have struggled for the independence of the colonial peoples of Africa. The other reason I'm here today, again, from the State Department and from the record of the Court of Appeals, is that when I am abroad, I speak out against injustices against the Negro people in this land. That is why I'm here. I'm not being tried for what I know.
So that tells you kind of person he was. You can see the type of person he's obviously interrogated for days. And he refuses to sign an affidavit affirming that he was not a member, not a communist. But it gives you an idea how he responds to questions. He doesn't back down at all. And obviously, in those days, a lot of people were very opposed to this. Although he finally does get his passport back. In 1963, he returns to the United States and spends his remaining years with his son in New York and his sister in Philadelphia. His wife died in 65, and he moves to Philadelphia where he dies, of course, in 76. His son, Paul Robeson Jr., spends his life working to preserve the legacy of his father. And he has things to overcome as well here. You can see that when his son marries a white woman over here, when he's 21 years old, the license application said the marriage is scheduled for Sunday. And this is, what year is this? This is in his son is 21 at this point. Robeson works on the legacy of his father, Paul Jr., publishes a 2-volume biography, creates an archive of his father's films, photographs, recordings, letters, and publications. As an advocate for social and racial justice, he shares the political views of his father, indicating that, like him, I am a black radical. This marker is erected in 1991. When Robeson returns to the United States, he spends the rest of his life in seclusion, momentarily assumes a role in a civil rights march in 1965, making a few major public appearances before falling very ill during a tour. He has double pneumonia, kidney blockage, 1965, he nearly dies. He finally dies in 1976 of a stroke at the age of almost 78. And maybe you've been to this Paul Robeson house down on Walnut Street. I just want to end with one last song, which we all love.
Swing low, sweet chariot, come in to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, come in to carry me home.
Robeson does not perform this in a specific show, but he famously records it many times during the 1930s. Now, we have time if anybody would like a comment or questions. I'd be happy to respond. Go ahead, Kathleen. Could you get the lights?
Oh, yeah, here.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Harry. This presentation would certainly fall under the category of DEI. And I wonder if you or anyone knows, if you were a professor of undergraduate studies in history at Columbia right now, would you be permitted to give this lecture?
I'm glad I'm not,
I attended a lecture at Columbia at law school about 5 years ago. And one of the leading exponents of which is really, it's really diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's really what a woke is and all of that sort of, and it's exactly what he was talking about. And there's this woman who is a scholar, and she's located both at Berkeley and at Columbia Law School. And she was one of the founders of the whole idea of, what's it called? It's now attacked a lot. That's right, critical race theory. And this lady can still teach that at Columbia University because I've assisted her lectures.
good for Columbia. That's an answer to Jim's question. I'd like to think I could, but it's hard to, I certainly would do it if, I think I would, yeah. Yeah.
Excuse me, he got married. He had no parents anymore. His wife was an educated woman with a degree. Why did they have to elope?
I've got a feeling, why did they have to elope? I don't know, maybe Jane will answer that question.
The point is that middle-class Americans were expected to have large marriages. And they were graduate students, and it would be called eloping, but it's because they probably didn't tell their relatives, and they didn't let the relatives come to a really big wedding.
Save money, they wouldn't.
Exactly, but that's what we used to call,
Yeah.
after all, I was born in 1933. And at that time, you eloped often maybe because your parents thought you weren't marrying up enough in society, or you didn't feel you had the money to have a wedding, or there were various reasons, but it didn't really mean that you were pregnant, and that's why you left. Yes.
That's a very good answer, thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. Harry, you shifted from a 1956 House Un-American Activities Committee, and then the next statement was in 1963 he returned from abroad. Did he leave the country because of the examination?
Yeah, yes, I don't think he returned in that interval. Once he got his passport back in 58, then he stayed in England, I'm pretty sure, most of the time.
He lived in Moscow.
Or in Moscow.
In Moscow.
He lived with all the other.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when he came back in 63, I didn't realize he was also there, but
Did you not register any criticism by him of Moscow for killing his poet friend?
Let me speak to that.
okay, thank you.
Please.
Let me just speak to this briefly, and that is that he indeed did stand up to the communist government, as I guess the magnitude of the murder, not just of Itzik Pfeffer, but of many Jewish poets at that time. What had happened was that during the Second World War, the Soviet Union needed the support of all its ethnic groups to fight the war, and they actively recruited the Jewish population. And they did it partly by honoring the people who wrote in Yiddish, by sponsoring plays, all kinds of things. And then when the war was over, they clamped right back down on the Jews and probably on other ethnic groups, I don't know. And things like publicly singing, writing, or whatever in Yiddish became forbidden. But Robeson stood up at a conference, at a concert, and I don't remember the year, I'm sorry, and he finished it with the great hymn of the Yiddish partisans who had fought the Nazis. Never say you go the last way. Zognet kein Mal as du gehst whatever. In any case, so, and he brought the house down. He did, I don't know whether he spoke out, but he realized there was repression going on, and he did at least make that symbolic act.
Thank you, Colin. This is very, very helpful. Any other?
What I wanted to talk about, which I had planned to do before I came, so I'm not going to deal with his all of this business of the blacklist, because I knew that you would cover that very well, and I think you gave a wonderful talk. But what I wanted to speak about was just a little bit of the origins of his world vision, Weltanschauung, as the Germans call it, vision of the world. And I was reading the newest edition of Paul Robeson's book. It's called Here I Stand. But this book, which is the second edition, also has another thing that he wrote, which was not in his autobiography. And that's called Something of the Rock. It's called, I'm sorry. That's called, it's another essay that is not his autobiography, but that is included in this new edition of his autobiography, with an introduction by the historian Sterling Stuckey. And in this previous essay, he talks about his early childhood and the influences, what influenced him. And Stuckey points out that when Robeson was living in Princeton, because his father, when he escaped from the South, went and settled in Princeton, and a lot of ex-slaves came and settled in Princeton, where they were the servants of the university. And that's where the father began his preaching career. At some point, I mean, the Robesons have always connected themselves with the AME Zion Church. And his brother was the minister for many decades of Mother Zion, which was in Harlem, and it was one of the most respected of the AME Zion churches. And so the family was very connected with the AME Zion Church, and the church had a university in Livingstone College. And I'm not saying that the AME Zions were more or less intellectual than the other two Black Methodist churches, but I come from the AME Zion tradition. As I say, we never did, but I wanted to point out that this historian points out that it's very understandable why Robeson adhered to socialism, not communism, but to socialism, because that community that they lived in Princeton was at the turn of the 20th century. And the members of the church were all mainly servants, because they were all mainly had been born into slavery. And this Sterling Stuckey points out that this observation of Robeson having observed this community, and Robeson said later that that's what really led him to believe that socialism was very useful, because he was raised among this community where everybody helped everyone else, and the class distinctions were not really that pronounced in the Black community in the turn of the century. Okay. And his father also took the side of Du Bois versus Booker T. Washington, and said that Blacks should be educated not just in technology, but in Greek and Latin, and they should be encouraged to develop their intellectual abilities, as well as supporting the masses. And my my grandfather was a bishop in the AME Zion Church, and this is the way we were raised. And people find that strange today, that you can both be for the masses and want to learn Greek and Latin. But that's what Paul Robeson, the Reverend, his father, stressed.
Okay, thanks very much.
Good.
Let me see if there are any other questions, comments. Jim?
Yeah, just a quick historical footnote. The jazz singer Alberta Hunter also was in Showboat. And she beat out a lot of other actors to get that spot.
Yeah.
And you mentioned Westfield, that Paul had to move with his family to Westfield.
Yeah.
Actually, Plainfield claims Bill Evans as their own, but he actually grew up in Westfield in his younger years. I just thought I'd put those.
Joel.
Bill Evans. Go.
Hi, I just want to know, did he ever practice law?
Not to my knowledge. Did he? Okay.
He was in a Wall Street law firm for about a year or two, and then got into something with a partner and secretary.
Yeah, he was
And
juggling
he
a number of
left,
different
yeah.
careers. I didn't know.
He
realize
did.
that.
He did
Okay.
practice law.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Okay. Well, thank you all for coming.
Thank you.